Sounds like a plan.
Hey guys, I just want to let everybody know I do have a hard stop at 10:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone to the blockchain art session here on Monday, August 12th. And Eric, go ahead and say again your thoughts for today's session. What you wanted to review.
So I've been working for the last few weeks on a document outlining some of the ideas that I've been working with for a few years now, but we never really wrote down in a coherent way. And I'm doing my graduate research on this right now, and so it's good for me. I need to be writing about this stuff anyway. I'm basically creating a series of documents. There's a 2-page version and a 7-page version, which are now published, right? I believe you guys have the outline, the Colab outline in the blockchain art channel. And I think this week I'll be publishing a 15-page version that starts to unpack a bit more of the items in this outline. But certain, I'm just going to put a timer on my brew here.
Oh, sure.
My caffeine brew.
Yeah.
I'm just warning everyone, for some reason I'm very brain foggy this morning, so if I seem incoherent, that is why. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, I guess, think about this more in general terms rather than in relationship to specific technologies that either exist, don't exist, or are so alpha that they might as well not exist.
Right. Sure.
And Jim's sort of spiel to me in the beginning was that the Rolang language was going to enable us to sort of think across platforms, which is a really appealing idea to me, because that is basically the whole concept of the distributed object, is that it's, or one of the more defining features of it is that it's cross-platform.
I don't understand how that's possible, but that's okay.
You don't understand how that's possible?
No.
Yeah, I don't really either, but that was what was.
Yeah, that's what.
I've been with ArtChain for just about a year now, and I have never ever heard that mentioned before. So when Greg kind of threw that out, I have to say, why have I, who've been pretty close to everything for a year, have never heard that mentioned before? It's possible.
Maybe Jim can speak to that when he comes back. I mean, because there was this idea of like, we're working with ArtChain, Holochain substrate, and there would basically, if we pushed for it, be an Ethereum implementation. Because, in my universe, basically it seems that, things kind of, even if Ethereum isn't scalable, it's like all of the MVPs are basically being built on Ethereum, and there's the most amount of developers. And so we kind of do need to engage with it. If also I should sort of say that, like, my approach, my interest in this is basically academic, right? I'm looking to create prototypes, not necessarily, I know that none of this is scalable yet, so it's like kind of a moot point to really sort of try and pick and choose, well, this one's scalable, this one isn't scalable, because it's all kind of hot air. Jim, hey Jim, can you speak a little bit to this idea about Rolang being a cross-platform language that enables us to create smart contracts across ArtChain, Holochain, Substrate, and even Ethereum?
Well, yeah, what we're working toward is ubiquitous Rolang. We want to be able to program in the process calculus. At this point, using ArtChain in standalone mode, we can write programs. It's like Doug Rushkoff says, program or be programmed. All of a sudden, we're enabled with this process language to orchestrate our processes and develop our, I guess what Greg used to call our social contracts, that we could attach, for example, to our art items or our communications in general, whatever, our the way we do business. This is our chain dream, so to speak, is for me about the ability for this world computer, our chain, to work by our rules, but also not just our chain, also in our peer-to-peer contracting and on our other mediums. Now, there is some effort to get Rolang, or process calculus anyway, running on Substrate, which would be used with Polkadot. We have a work study every other Monday that deals with that, and at the end of this month, we're starting one on Holochain, which we'll be looking at getting the process calculus up on Holochain. And each one has different advantages and disadvantages. I mean, Holochain does not have a global consensus mechanism. It doesn't have any real consensus mechanism. It's grow your own. But we can still do peer-to-peer contracting and prove them.
But is it Rolang built on top of the RVM, or the JVM that's going to be the RVM? I mean, everything has to get interpreted at the bytecode level, right? So how would Holochain or any of these other platforms, you'd have to take the Rolang and kind of compile it down to whatever these other platforms.
Right. There's embryonic versions of Rolang written in JavaScript, Rust, and Haskell currently that people are working on in the collab. So,
and then you have to compile that to whatever platform you want to run it on. So it's not like it's built in to anything. We have to do the conversions between all platforms, which means at some point, like to get it to run on Ethereum right now, you'd have to be able to compile down to a Solidity core.
Yes. That would certainly be a challenge. And
okay, so
we're not going to get the low level. I mean, you could get very high level process orchestration working across any environment, but in order to bring that down to the basic level of computing, within the applications, that you sort of need Rolang built into the hardware, which we're not going to have for a long time. The closest thing to the hardware that we're going to have is the RChain implementation.
Okay.
And so when whenever we need global consensus, we're going to, the RChain platform is going to be where we're going to go. My own view of RChain is, and I think Greg's view also is beyond the actual singular implementation, but across all the Rolang implementations that talk to each other. And this is what Greg has said over and over again, is that we can. It's very natural for these process calculus systems to talk to each other, and to cooperate together.
Yeah, but not natively. So there would have to be some effort to make that happen.
Right.
Right. Okay. And then one other question. Greg said on Friday or Thursday, Friday, that you'll be able to use ETH to run Rolang smart contracts. So when you have to pay to have your contract deployed, natively, you're going to be able to do that with an ERC20 token. And that's something else I never heard before. I don't know. Did you guys hear that?
On Friday?
Yeah, I think in the community meeting, right? Or maybe in the members meeting. But in one meeting on Friday, he said you can use an ERC20 token to stake or as gas to pay for your Rolang smart contracts.
Interesting. I know he was, I mean, that was an issue that he was raising for a while in terms of having multiple staking tokens. And I know Greg's always been in favor of that. And that would include Bitcoin or ETH.
Yeah, I don't know how that works though, right?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right.
But basically, you want the participants to be in control of the conversion effort. I mean, you can't. I think you have to have a free market underneath it. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't hardwire in the translation.
Right. So getting back to what Eric is looking for, this one platform that everybody could communicate via. I mean, it's always possible, but you have to create alliances and spur adoption of all these platforms. It's not like so. I just want to be clear. It's not like throwing a switch and everybody talks Rolang. We have to go out and either convince folks or create development efforts ourselves across all these open source platforms for the support.
Or we could just do what everyone, do what everyone else does and just say we're doing it. Which I think is just as good as anything else, honestly. We should just we can just talk a big game and just kind of run our mouths and maybe send some press releases out. I think that's a great idea. Like that's a great way to do these things.
I'm not really a fan of vaporware.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things we'll be doing with these interfaces to Holochain and to Substrate is creating a gateway so that they cooperate. But then it's a matter of how do you trust the gateways? Right?
Yeah,
there's a whole nother level of trust that has to be developed.
I mean, I'm interested in the more cooperative chains cooperating. I mean, honestly, I'm not as interested in Ethereum and Bitcoin being involved with this right now. But if we're thinking about this as a distributed, decentralized commons, having a sort of an API or some way for running operations across different cooperative chains, I think would be really useful, or being able to port that. But for now, I think the main thing is just sort of coming up with the formulation of the idea itself. Like why would we want it to, how would something move through these ecosystems is I think a really interesting conversation to have, or why would we want it to move through these ecosystems like that versus what's the technical way it would happen. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's something that's going to take a really long time to figure out. But I think in the larger picture, by the way, just a side note, I just had an idea because as soon as we end these Zoom sessions, we lose all of the links that were posted in the chat window. And I was thinking maybe we could start posting links in the Discord while we're on these Zoom.
Yeah. Actually, there's a setting, and you can set the setting to save the chat window. So whenever I end a meeting, I get a text file with everything that was put into the chat.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, I see a little thing. It says save chat.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not automatic, but I have to do it.
When you're offline, you could go to settings. I don't know if you could do that when you're online, but when you're not in a meeting, look in settings and there's an option, because I've checked that. So every time I end a meeting, if there was something in the chat, I get a pop-up in Explorer with the text file. Yeah, so you can definitely do that.
Okay. All right. Well, just also like in terms of keeping a repository, a shared repository of things that were discussed, so other people that aren't in these meetings can go back and see it. Maybe that would be helpful. I don't know. Or I'll just copy and paste the links and throw them in there at the end of the day.
I think using the Discord channel is probably a pretty good way to keep people up to date, especially if they're not here.
Yeah.
You get the chat at all.
Yeah.
I know Dan likes to set up that norm that we, record this stuff, in the channel somewhere rather than, quick stuff. A lot of chit chat stuff can go in the Zoom chat, but any links or relevant things, they go in the Discord channel. That's great.
Welcome, Daryl. Yeah, all right. So we have this little 2-page document here. It's not very descriptive, but it's meant for those of us with low attention spans and not a lot of time to sort of have just like, a baseline to begin a conversation about what is a distributed object. And not even talking about the implications or what would we want to do with such a thing, or like what could we envision happening with such a thing, but just like what is this? And this is part of the conversation that I've been having for several years at this point. And to a certain extent, I don't feel like there's been an immense amount of progress, because people have basically substituted the idea for the art itself with a token. And a token isn't the art. But that said, a contract and a certificate of authenticity and a uniquely hashed file, right, that's located someplace on a distributed storage mechanism, like there's legal precedent then to sort of, this is what Lauren was sort of talking about last week. We can kind of, it's like almost like, I almost see it as like a holographic projection, right? We're sort of like, we see this thing now floating in midair. It's baseless, it's rootless, and yet it exists. And I'm really interested in the contract itself. Like, I think there's several pieces of this that are missing. I don't know that we're the ones to solve all of these issues, but on a basic level, there is going to need to be a system, a distributed system of provenance that is part of an open source commons. And this is a problem that there have been a lot of art startups attempting to solve over the last 4 years, 5 years. But they're all trying to sort of leave their stink on it by putting these little pesky transaction fees into everything and basically owning the protocol. They're all trying to become the protocol, right? And they're not interoperable. There's no agreement. They're not using California law, right? Like the art startup in Berlin, Ascribe, was, I don't know what they were using for their baseline. Monograph in New York, he was using Litecoin as his meeting point. There was VerisArt. There was now there's Codex Protocol and Artery, and God knows what. But like, it's just like none of these systems talk to each other, and so there's no, like basically a museum or like Sotheby's, right, is going to have to pick one of them to go with, and then that company is going to wind up getting infinite transaction fees every time a work of art is sold, and there isn't necessarily draw to suite or resale royalties for the artist built into this. And furthermore, it's if we follow like the logic of disintermediation, this is not actually something that needs to exist, right? So in a way, like the conversation that I'm, I guess, looking at is how do we think about this more like a protocol rather than a service? And can we define what those protocols are so they're open, they're accessible by all people? And maybe there's other ways that people can spin businesses off of it, but not by owning the fundamental substrate of digital property itself, right? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking straight to my heart there, Eric. That's something that I've been completely passionate about for a long time now. And I believe that any solution can't scale if it is set up like an owned corporation.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jim has experienced this firsthand, with sort of developing some of the internet protocols in like the late 80s and early 90s. I mean, this is what enabled the internet to scale, and we're sort of seeing a necessity for this again, in new ways to meet challenges.
We've built different protocols, but now I see what you were asking when I returned here. It's more about the view that I have of consensus now is a consensus among blockchains or across blockchains, and this can unleash the contract or the art object from any particular chain, even where you have provenance that's recorded in multiple places.
Yeah, I mean, that in and of itself, just being able to record the data to multiple chains, gives it like the object a type of ontology, which I think is really important going forward in ways that I probably haven't even thought through yet. But just in terms of how we think about instantiating an idea or substantiating an idea as the thing, not just as an ephemeral sort of, I don't know, tchotchke that you can kind of throw away or someone else can take advantage of or whatever.
I don't know if these guys know what a tchotchke is.
Look, Jim's from Jersey, he knows what a tchotchke is.
Daryl's.
It's like,
on these issues, so are you talking not just digital art, but also physical art?
Potentially, yeah, but I'm hesitant to go there yet, and I'm not necessarily trying to solve that puzzle right now for a lot of reasons. Namely, while plagiarism is an issue with with physical art, on a fundamental level, you make a thing, you sell a thing. It's like it's a lot simpler than digital art, and like people that make physical objects don't need the same type of support mechanism in order to sell their work that digital artists need right now. And I also don't have any personal background in physical art making. I've always only dealt with digital art, and ultimately, I think once this is established, it may then retroactively apply to physical art, or like there may be a way of adapting it. But there's like people are doing stuff where they're like spraying this diamond schmutz onto the painting, and so it gives it like this sheen. So when you photograph it with your smartphone, it got some kind of custom moire pattern or something on it. I don't know. It's a whole. What are you gonna attach an RFID tag to the painting? You're gonna have a thing. I don't know how you solve that issue.
Yeah, actually, VeChain is working on that because their whole thing is physical, and then certifying, putting some kind of tag on it that's innocuous to the viewer, right? You don't want the Mona Lisa with this huge digital ID tag at the lower, left-hand corner. But then they're also working with DMGLV, which is an assurance company. So when they put that physical object on their blockchain, and the blockchain then handles the security of that through the immutability of the data, but now they also have a company that's certified when it was put onto the blockchain that item was
processed.
Real. So I can't take a bag of coffee from Uganda, put it on the blockchain, when that bag of coffee itself was made from counterfeit and not well-sourced beans. There's somebody physically on the ground there who's certifying. And of course, you have to have a company that you trust. But it opens up all other issues with physical and how do you.
Oh, he's kind of like who's the guy that does the kosher certification? And you gotta
Rabbis.
yeah,
and,
I know,
and that's a scam too, right? They're like,
it's a total scam, but they're the ones that go on the ground and they give you a certification. You got to pay the guy some money to give you the certification. It's the same thing. What a fantastic racket! It's like rabbinical blockchain kosher.
Well, it is because I know a lot of Orthodox Jews, and they all know which rabbis to trust and which not to trust. Like one guy, they have a book. I don't know if you've ever seen. I've got a friend who's Orthodox. He pulls out a book, so every time there's a food that comes up, he knows whether he can eat it or not. And in the back of the book, they've got a rating system for the rabbis who certify the kosherness. And if they see some guy's name who they don't trust, they won't eat the food because they can't trust the certification. It's an interesting problem, right? And that's like a real world, long time experiment where we could see trust and not trust. It's interesting.
Yeah, and this whole thing is related to the supply chain stuff, which they're doing for many reasons. To see if stuff is locally grown or authentically from Champagne Valley in France or whatever. So there's a lot of people working on the physical provenance side of this, and then you have now you have the geolocation built in, where a physical object can't be in two places at once. So yeah, there's a lot of aspects to that problem that you don't have to look at. I mean, if you're dealing with digital art, you have different issues.
Yeah. Hey guys, unfortunately, I got to run. I have a standing co-op meeting at 10:30. So, but Eric, again, great conversation.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for coming, Daryl. Yeah.
All right, and we'll catch up. I think we have a meeting tomorrow, right? So.
Yeah, I got you in. Oh wait, no, you didn't give me what time. I didn't get a thing from you.
Let's see. Oh, I didn't schedule it. Okay. Did we say 9 o'clock? I think.
9 o'clock your time.
Oh wait, no, I have it. I have it at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock your time.
Yeah.
So that's 1 o'clock my time.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think I added you.
Oh yeah, put that in.
Okay. Let me add you and yeah. Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, good. Thanks for reminding me. I totally spaced on that. I forgot I had that in my.
Okay.
Did we lose Daryl? You probably
yeah. He dropped. He's going to the meeting I'm going to. Okay.
And is Daryl going to invite Daryl to that meeting also?
No, this was just Eric and I to talk about stuff. Okay. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Yep.
Is this like an R-Chain co-op meeting or something that everyone's going to?
So they're R-Chain staff. So Daryl, Ned, you have some developers. They're employees of R-Chain. So they have meetings throughout the week that they attend.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Cool. And you guys more are on the collab side, so you don't go to those meetings.
Exactly. So we're community members, and so we just kind of congregate in the collab in Jim's room.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like, I think I'm meeting with Ned to talk a little bit more and get in the weeds with the RCAT system and, how we could sort of use that to create a working prototype for an art object of some sort. We'll edition something. I don't know if Lauren won't be here for the rest of the month because she's tied up on Mondays. I'm trying to see if I can sort of get her to start showing up in September, but she's got kind of a crazy academic schedule.
Sure.
And I have to actually have to sort mine out, so I'm not sure what's going to happen in a couple of weeks. We may, if we have to change the time for this,
Yeah.
we can obviously negotiate that and figure that out.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of this seems to be about just managing expectations, you know, and understanding that it's all alpha and like not really, none of it's ready for prime time. And so it's like, you know, I want this to work, but I think what's more important is that we have sort of working prototypes that we can use to talk about these ideas and sort of
Sure.
demonstrate the ideas and in a more of an academic sense, you know, that lets us sort of influence how other people are thinking about developing these systems and tools.
Yeah, I like that idea of perhaps ArchChain could be that engine to create a protocol, and ultimately that protocol can be cross blockchain platforms. So it's very inclusive. That's the ultimate goal. So there's not a particular company that's created to oversee it, but protocol spawns off other entities which are connected to it, which, you know, help it proliferate and manifest.
Well, and so, I mean,
I think the mantra that this should follow is protocols, not platforms.
Protocols, not platforms. Okay, yeah, I like that.
Okay.
I guess I got a thumbs up.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, you can Google that. There's a lot of stuff on it, and you know, it makes a lot of sense. And you know, I think a lot of people just don't think that way. They think holochain, and they think ArchChain, and they think this. They're not thinking protocols. They're thinking platforms. And
right. Gotcha. That was helpful, and actually that kind of helps me think about rethink ArchChain. You know, we've been thinking of ArchChain as a platform, the ArchChain platform, but you could be a broader sense, the ArchChain protocol.
Absolutely, and that's what's happening in the collab. That's what we're doing. We're taking the process calculus and you know, expanding its use. And I think, you know, I don't know, maybe Greg is a little you know, possessive in terms of, you know, the ArchChain platform, but I think, you know, he would agree with this protocols, not platforms ideology.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm wondering actually, and this would be interesting to talk to you guys about, because I'm started thinking about some of the other things. Like early on, Jim, you had sent me a bunch of articles and things that you guys were working on that I've since lost about decentralized governance and collaborations over networks. And I know there's a bunch of stuff in the DigLife repository on this, but I'm thinking I'm basically going to be launching a group here in Buffalo I'm sort of tentatively titling Community Lab, right? And the idea is to sort of take some of the ideas and some of the conversations that we're having here and start sort of taking some of these prototypes. Like we're developing this distributed object framework, right? And then start trialing it with a few artists in Buffalo, right? And seeing how that would work, how we would work presenting it through a gallery with that way, right? Similarly, like other ways that we can think about things like cooperative circular currencies and distributed governance systems that we could then use in other types of community scenarios. So there was an academic group that I was a part of 2 years ago or a year ago called Money Lab. I'm one of the only members still left in this academic group. And so I'm sort of reframing it outside of the university, more situated in the city. And I'm going to be sort of reaching out to people working in areas like community land trusts and different types of non-for-profit spaces in the city, people running art institutions, and actually trying to bring a bunch of people together to have this dialogue about how technology and community can sort of work together to create new tools, to create new forms of like liquidity and like distributed governance and distributed risk, new forms of cooperatives, and how we can sort of overlay those on top of the city infrastructure. And so I'm wondering if there's other ways that we can sort of conceptualize of the blockchain art project that integrates other aspects of what's happening both in CoLab and DigLife and in RChain. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, my thoughts are that we would actually do some prototypes, and this requires having some user stories, and we have some. I mean, some of them are implied. I mean, we come across the Tribute Object Framework version 0.1. We have files zipped, hashed, uploaded to IPFS. Okay, well, I put a link to an article of how to do that in the blockchain art channel, and we have a work study where we take a piece of art and we do that. Okay, and then we have we have something on IPFS, and then we have the smart contract. Well, what's our use case? What's our user story? We choose a user story for the contract for this art that we put on IPFS, and we write the roll line in a work study for that thing. Okay. And it's we're talking about prototyping, so it's just a matter of using agile methodology. One use case at a time, one user story, one feature, one thing that we demonstrate each time. I mean, the ERC 721 token model, that may be a couple of work studies for us to develop that, right? But we could definitely prototype that on RChain. We don't have to do, we could put, another use, we could do it on Ethereum also, but
doing it on Ethereum will enable it to be sold. That's like what's interesting is if we have everything on RChain, but then we still issue the Ethereum token.
Yeah.
That's like, I think that's like a kind of an interesting use case, where it's pointing at the file located in RChain, not on IPFS. And maybe the metadata is stored on RChain as well. But the ERC 721 has hash data from the smart contract and the certificate of authenticity and the hashed file, and those locations. But so therefore that's like the token itself is the thing that can get sold and circulate, but the actual thingness, the ontology of the file of the digital file is located in the RChain zone.
Yeah, it could be. For a prototype, it might be nice to do it on Ethereum, but it might be simpler to just do it on RChain to begin with. And the ERC 20, we could do. The whole thing can be done on Ethereum too. We can have the use case where we have it, where we demonstrate it on cross chains, right?
Yeah, because this isn't like hard. This isn't like hard to do on Ethereum right now.
Right.
I mean, it's possible to do this. It's just no one's doing it exactly this way, but like it's more all the pieces are basically there to do this. There. So I think, I mean, and there's people that could help us do that, so we don't have to, you know, learn everything in order to just make that work. But that said, yeah, I mean, and then like, I mean, there's sort of this secondary thing about how does someone view the file, which I was thinking is really a second tier problem. You know, once we've established the file and can sort of put the information up, how do we enable users to access the file, issue rights, which sounds like there may be some ways of doing that through our songs stack, but I'm not really sure, still not really sure exactly how deep that's going to go.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. No, I mean, I've sort of always assumed that there has to be you know, you're going to have some component. In other words, you want to be able to issue, in essence, one-time tokens, right? Or one-time in other words, you don't want to give away the store for every time you get a token. You want, you know, you want to be able to do a token per view type thing, or a token is good for viewing through a certain time or something, a ticket.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, like as a token can also issue sub-tokens. So,
Right.
you know, I mean, there's lots of ways of like having the ownership token and then issuing use tokens that enable institutions to view the file, or you know, you can temporarily lend a token via one of these sort of sub tokens to an institution that gives them usage rights.
A service that's going to handle them. If it's encrypted with a certain key on IPFS, okay, if you can't give away that key because it gives away the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to have some service that accepts one kind of token and then streams provides, you know, provides a proxy to the unencrypted data based on that token or key.
Yeah. I mean, it's not exactly a simple problem.
I mean, it's not that complicated either. It's just something that has to be done.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately,
another piece of the architecture.
Yeah, like I mean, theoretically, like a wallet viewer, you know, something like MetaMask should be able to supply that type of rights management, or the rights are embedded in the token, and then the token is the thing that enables you to sort of handshake and open up the open sesame. I don't really
need a service.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that aspect of this interests me as much right now, because ultimately that is infrastructure that someone may need to build and privatize. You know, like that seems to be something that, because if you have to start worrying about streaming services, right, then that takes bandwidth and that costs money, and that may be where people wind up building their business models. But fundamentally, the idea is that the object itself needs to be accessible through whichever portal you choose to access it through, rather than being tied only to one portal. So for instance, there's a company right now that's called Sedition. They've been around for a number of years now. They're a fairly successful digital art marketplace that lets you do multiple editions of like videos and stills. But it's a walled ecosystem. I mean, you can't see, if they go out of business, you lose your entire collection that you've bought through them, you know. But they, you know, they have an app. So if you have a Chromecast on your TV, you can stream your art collection to your TV that you purchased. I mean, it's cool, but it's not real, you know.
Yeah, create something that's not platform specific. So in the event that Sedition goes out of business, those art objects that that you own can still exist. That would be the ultimate, having that protocol available.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, so in a sense, I feel like I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I want to just focus on the art object itself rather than how we're going to access it. But maybe I'm wrong, because maybe we do need to build that into the fundamental substrate, that you need some type of token to unlock the hashed file so you can view it. That may need to be built in from sort of the baseline, the base level. Because like there's lots of, like, the problem is this gets real complicated real quick when you start getting into all the different permutations and types. And I mean, digital art is constantly evolving. So, I mean, how do you do that with a VR piece? How do you do that with a website, you know, which requires that it be served and there be user data? And like, I mean, it gets, we're talking about just dealing with a video or a still image is relatively simple. And what I'm really feeling adamant about is that we not reduce the art to fit our needs for handling ownership issues. Does that make sense? Like the idea is that, well, we build a square box so we can buy and sell the boxes that fit in that square hole.
Mm-hmm.
And then so therefore everyone has to make square boxes to fit in our square hole.
Yeah, so I see where you're coming from. So, you know, it's and those technical challenges of starting with the object and working around that. Yeah, you know, it's certainly head down that path and see, you know, what the obstacles are and that will appear and when they appear. So, yeah, that's certainly an understandable way to proceed.
So do you guys have a good grasp of how our chain handles the files themselves? Like, because you can upload, my understanding is that we can upload files directly to our chain. Our chain acts as the distributed storage container.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried that that's not going to be efficient for another year or two. In principle, yes, we can do it.
In principle, yes, good. I love principles. It's good to have principles.
Principles, whether we actually want to do it or not, I think we have to wait until it performs comparably to IPFS.
Okay. So you're actually, you would then be leaning towards doing this on IPFS instead of using.
Yeah, we're keeping content on IPFS until, you know, I mean, certainly for small things, we can keep them on our chain, you know, right away. But
I mean, what's a small thing? Like, what's the file? Because like IPFS used to, I don't know what it is now, but it used to have a file cap size limit. You know, like we couldn't upload and video that was really cumbersome, because it was like, yeah, a couple of years ago it was like 100 megabytes or some kind of like really ridiculously small number of data. I don't know what it is now, but is there a thing in our chain?
Huh. Yeah, I think there is, but I don't know what it is. I think it's I think you're definitely going to have a problem, you know, handling objects that don't fit in memory.
Yeah, that's usually a problem. Yes.
So, and I, you know, I don't know what the restrictions are with IPFS right now either.
I mean, look, DTube is using it. Like, I mean, this DTube and I mean, like the Steemit platform is using IPFS as their backbone, pegged to Amazon servers. So it works, you know. And I guess like Ned was talking about some mechanism in RSong where like it's stored, the file itself is stored on chain, but then it's like they have some kind of caching mechanism to actually do the streaming. So it's like not being streamed from our chain in real time. There's sort of a mediating thing, and then it comes to your computer after that.
That's only for files that are frequently served up. So if it's a file that's infrequent, then it'll go back to that to the blockchain and pull it up. So it's that file can still be served up. It just takes a little bit longer. So so the caching just adds to that speed component of the usability.
I mean, I imagine that we would want to do something similar, have the ability to cache file locally, but just in a way that's not accessible. I mean, I don't know. I have this idea. I don't know how you guys feel about this, or like how anyone else feels about this, but in terms of theorizing about like, well, what is the object and what makes it valuable, right? And with digital, like we kind of have this thing where it's like, well, the nature of digital is that it's fundamentally replicable, right? I got a video and I can make a million copies of it, right? And there's no way to own the copy, right? But what we're saying is actually no, because we're hashing the file and then pointing to that hash, both in the certificate of authenticity and then the smart contract, which mediates that sale, we're saying no. The art object is actually only this thing that we're pointing to that's been hashed, right? So even if you make a million copies of it, if you try to go to sell it, you can't sell it because we know that it needs to be mediated by the smart contract. And this thing that's hashed in distributed storage is that thing. So like in a sense, like I don't know if I care so much that the file gets cached locally or that it can be potentially copied, because it's still not the thing itself. It's
Right.
an instantiation of the thing.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I know this is probably not as pertinent for you guys.
No, this helps me kind of get a better understanding of what the architecture is that Ed was referring to. So so that the thing is the smart contract and the hash that's back on the blockchain. And so if that digital art gets reproduced, in order for that resale to happen, it's got to go back to that smart contract and the hash in order for anything to happen in the future. So yeah, it's completely understandable, and having it a cache just makes it a little bit more speedy.
I mean, Steve, when you're in your experience in working with RSong, are you familiar with the mechanism for rights management that they're using?
No, I wish I had a better understanding, but that person ultimately is Kayvon, because since he's the one who built it, he can talk infinitely on our song, and probably for that matter our cat. But and what I know is just someone who spoke to someone who trying to explain what it is that they know. So now I have listened to Kayvon speak a few times on the topic, but that was early on, and I'm still getting oriented. So but yeah, there's still much more that I can learn in order to get an understanding of what the basic elements are, especially with electronic rights protocol.
Yeah, it's complicated.
They had
How was that, Jim?
a little different situation in that they had a proprietary codec.
Yeah, that was doing the
Yeah.
re-encoding the file with the waveform stuff in it.
I mean, so they may not have had the same issues that we have. But in any case, I think the Tuesday meeting is I believe the internal RCAT staff, so to speak.
The Tuesday at 4 o'clock, the Tuesday at 4 o'clock thing.
Tuesday, what time did he say it was? He said it was, the thing he said he was going to get you added to, which is 10 o'clock, 10, 11, 12, 1. 10, 11, 12, 1. So it'll be 1 o'clock tomorrow. He was going to add you to it. Ned was going to.
I'm talking to Ned tomorrow at 1 o'clock East Coast time.
Right.
Is that?
I thought that, you know, Tuesday, they had, you know, essentially the public meeting is Friday for our song, or for, right? And then the Tuesday meeting was like an internal staff meeting for our cat and our song, as I understood it. So
Yeah, I think it's just Eric and Ned talking to each other. It's just the two of them.
well, sometime on Tuesday they have a staff.
Sometime on Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the one. I don't have the calendar up right now. Where's the general? Oh, the calendar. Here's the calendar.
And I know Daryl was interested in getting re-engaged.
The DAP work study, the DAP developer work study is at 12 p.m.
No.
Oh no, that's no. Oh, that would be 3. This looks like it's all right. This is West Coast time, so this would be 3 p.m. The DAP developer work study East Coast time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one you're talking about. That's RCAT.
No, it's not on the calendar.
Oh.
It was an internal meeting that they have on Tuesdays. I don't know. I thought you were going to be going to that, but you may be going to a different thing with Ned. But in any case, that's one of those 2 meetings is the place to get information on.
Well, yeah, I'll talk to Ned about it because maybe I can start jumping on that call if he's a part of that process, and that'd be cool. Yeah, I mean, the talking to the RSong folks is interesting. You know, they've done a lot of work, and yet there's still kind of these hang-ups when it comes to how this stuff actually, how the wheels hit the road, you know, in terms of,
Yeah.
because it's like it's like the same problem that I see over and over again happening in engineering communities where there's not the way that these technologies gets developed is from the technologist perspective, not from the community perspective.
Okay.
So the problems that get solved are relative to that position. You know, it's not that they're lesser problems. It's just there's different problems that, you know, they need to find a way of meeting in the middle, I think, you know.
Sure.
And those decisions that go into those tools, you know, it's interesting. I mean, but like, and they seem to sort of resort by mid meeting. I tend to wind up like just like getting in these like weird like conversations with Greg, asking him questions about why certain assumptions are baked into like their platform.
Yeah.
Which is interesting and really cool. I mean, he's so brilliant. I need to read. They wrote some insanely long white paper on like some social network that they theorized about like a few years ago, which it looks really interesting. I need to sort of spend some time with that. Well, all right. So is there any use in going through this outline anymore right now, or like should we just stop for right now and wait until after I talk to Ned tomorrow, so we can sort of figure out in more detail like what is possible right now?
I think, yeah, we attack this in greater detail next week.
Yeah, so we should wait until after I
Yeah.
talk to Ned.
We're sort of the end of the hour now. I don't know if we want to. Probably want to finish up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's up to you guys. I said maybe we could. I mean, I do. I feel like I want to go through this kind of methodically, and figure out if this makes sense to you guys.
Yeah.
But
I'm
I think
thinking it would be better to, sort of start the hour with it so that
Yeah.
people, or maybe I could just restart the recording if you want to go through it. But I'm going to be occupied. I got some other stuff to take care of.
yeah.
If you wanted to go through it now, I could restart the
Yeah,
recording.
so I think then next week I'll post a thing just like stating in the agenda that we're going to move through the distributed object framework methodically together and sort of talk about it on a point by point basis. And I'm sure we'll get through only like a third of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, we can just start out with that as the focal point.
Sounds like a plan.
We're going to lose Ned and Daryl on the half hour. Maybe we want to move this forward a half hour? Would that?
I'd be down to move this forward half an hour next week to 12:30. Yeah, well, I don't, again, like, I'm not sure what's gonna.
I have a problem.
Is your Dig Life meeting, when is the Dig Life meeting that I went to?
Dig Life meeting is, yeah, I should know I was there. It is the hour before this meeting.
I want to start, should I start coming to that meeting, Jim?
Probably, yeah.
Where's the calendar for Dig Life?
Well, it's on their website, but do you use Google Calendar?
Yeah.
Let's see. So if you go to diglife.com and click events or whatever, you'll get it. But I can give you the
Diglife.coop or diglife.com?
Diglife.com is, still the old website. Where is this? This is where with specific people. Where is your
About Us?
where? Where is your email?
It's okay.
There you are. Okay, I invited you to the calendar.
Oh, good. I'm on a Digital Life.
Right, that's the main calendar. Then they have they have other calendars.
That's the main. Oh, there's other calendars than this one?
Well, there's an operations calendar. You don't need to be on that. I thought there was another one too.
Okay, brilliant. Cool. Thanks, Jim. So, DApp developer work study, tech updates and open tech conversation. Open ecosystem mapping call. What's that?
It's, community mapping. I mean, if you want to get a picture of all the people in the blockchain art arena, or the different organizations, or whatever, and, it's social mapping, mostly. It's one of the main activities of Daylight is doing these maps, and they have some pretty incredible maps that we have.
Oh, cool. All right, cool. I'll jump on that. And what's going on in the Rolang Liquid Democratic work study? Is that is the Rolang Liquid Democracy work study?
That's mostly live coding of trying to get the programs working, and for people who want to learn Rolang, and it's it's learning Rolang mostly.
Okay, cool. All right, listen, so guys, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for coming this week. And I'm gonna try and send you the extended article that I'm writing this for the end of this week. Hopefully it'll be polished up so it's not super embarrassing. And then
Sounds good.
get some feedback from you guys would be great.
All righty.
All right.
All right, gentlemen. Yep. Have a great day.